Welcome to Good Burger Reviews. My name is John, and I'm here to do an end of the year special presentation. And that is the top 10 most surprising movies of 2025. And my disclaimer on most surprising is very simple. You guys have already seen my most top 10 disappointing movies of 2025, my most top 10 movies of all time in 2025, and my top 10 streamers. So what makes a surprising list different? Well, just like the disappointing, some of the movies could be decent, some of the movies could be rough, more towards the decent side, but there's something in the movie that surprised me that I wasn't expecting. Either, for example, I may have had low anticipation on the movie and I ended up giving it a better review than I thought. Or simply, maybe it just had a surprise ending. Or maybe there was a big element in the film that was surprising to me. And I only have 2 honorable mentions, which were on my top 10 list, but I'm going to mention them here because my anticipation of what they were going in and how great they ended up, and they ended up on my top 10 list, so they're not, I don't like putting movies on the same list unless it's like through the honorable mention category. So I'm just going to mention Sinners and Weapons here because neither one of those movies I was expecting to be as great as they were, and they were awesome. They were in my top 5. I also should mention The Long Walk as well. I wasn't expecting that to be as great as it was in that. Check out my top 10 list. I'll put a link in the description. So with no further ado, let's get into it. Coming in at number 10, released in April of 2025, Screamboat. This movie was directed by Stephen LaMorte. It stars David Howard Thornton and Joe DeRosa. Basic premise: on the last ferry of the night in New York, passengers and crew are hunted by merciless rat, and what should have been a peaceful crossing turns into a bloody massacre. So what surprised me the most about Screamboat? Well, considering it's one of those public domain slasher movies, and I've complained mostly about them throughout the last 2 years, this one was quite impressive. And when you throw David Howard Thornton into the mix, playing Screamboat Willie the Rat, the man who originally played Terrifier, it added a new higher level to this movie. And when I think of it in comparison to the worst movie of 2024, which was Mousetrap, another Steamboat Willie slasher, this one was much better because the mouse was practical effects and was more scarier, more brutal, and the mouse in that movie basically was the adult manager of Chuck E. Cheese wearing a Mickey Mouse mask, slaughtering teenagers. Another thing that was surprising and fun about Screamboat was the characters. They were funny, even though they were fairly basic. They had these characters that were princesses or named after Disney princesses, but they were drunk Staten Island New Yorkers that were extremely funny. And even our main characters were quite good as the lead. I also was a fan of the setting of this one. It was pretty ironic having Steamboat Willie be on the Staten Island ferry. Coming in at number 9, released in December of 2025, Anaconda. This movie was directed by Ton Gormican. It stars Jack Black, Paul Rudd, and Steve Zahn. A group of friends are going through a midlife crisis. They decide to remake a favorite movie from their youth and encounter unexpected events along the way as they enter the jungle battling an anaconda snake. Though this one received an honorable mention on my most disappointed list for having lack of snake, the overall movie surprised me, and I was impressed with the zany comedy of Jack Black, Paul Rudd, and Steve Zahn, who've never been a full team together before, in this action-packed comedy about 3 guys who set out to the Amazon River to remake the Anaconda film. Now, one of the biggest surprises to me was I didn't even know this movie was coming until about 3 weeks before. And I started to highly anticipating it since I realized it had a Christmas release date. Though this movie wasn't as great or as action-packed as the original Anaconda in 1997, I love the new tone and route they chose to go, having these buddies go on an adventure together, middle-aged guys just acting goofy and having the time of their lives, going on an adventure with their girlfriend. And one big plus is I feel like Jack Black can take any stupid concept and make it really fun, and he shines really well here as compared to other movies he's done over the last couple of years. Coming in at number 8, released in January of 2025, Wolfman. This movie was directed by Leigh Whannell. It stars Christopher Abbott and Julia Garner. The basic premise: a family at a remote farmhouse is attacked by an unseen animal, but as the night stretches on, the father begins to transform into something unrecognizable. So this one holds a special place in my heart, it being the first movie I reviewed on my channel, the first movie to get a good burger. But what really surprised me about Wolfman, as it was released in January, I wasn't expecting it to be that great and that intense with the action. And I was really impressed with how this movie went and what route they took to have Wolfman go, different than the original 1941 Wolfman. Another thing that I found impressive was this was like a little stepping stone for Julia Garner before she did her fantastic performance in Weapons. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is early on when the truck crashes and they first get attacked by the Wolfman. It did remind me of scenes from like Jurassic Park: The Lost World. And though this one received mixed reviews, I ended up really enjoying this one and glad it was the first movie I reviewed on my channel. Coming in at number 7, released in June of 2025, Megan 2.0. This movie was directed by Gerald Johnstone. It stars Allison Williams, Violet McGraw, and Annie Donald. Basic premise: 2 years after Megan's rampage, her creator, Gemma, resorts to resurrecting her infamous creation in order to take down Amelia, the military-grade weapon who was built by a defense contractor who stole Megan's underlying technology. So when Megan goes good and takes a James Bond meets Fast and Furious type of movie style, I was actually pretty impressed. I had a good time with the characters in this one and the route they decided to take Megan, not just making it a complete repeat or echo of the original Megan, which was a surprise success a couple years earlier. I'm curious to see what they do in this franchise next with Megan, now that she's found a good side. And I'm wondering if they will make a sequel. Hopefully they just don't add Teletubby version to Megan, because that part was silly. I think what surprised me the most about Megan, the whole franchise, is that both movies I expected to be bad or that I wouldn't like, and I walked away from Megan and Megan 2.0 having a better experience and enjoying the movie more than I thought I would. Coming in at number 6, released in June of 2025, The Ritual. This movie was directed by David Meidel. It stars Al Pacino, Dan Stevens, and Ashley Greene. Two priests, one in crisis with his face and the other confronting a turbulent past, must overcome their differences to perform a risky exorcism based on a true story from 1928. So despite the mixed reviews and the harsh reviews from some of the critics, I really enjoyed The Ritual, and what surprised me the most about it was how accurate to form it was in portraying priests and nuns, because it seems like Hollywood seems to get that wrong more times than not. But in this movie, since it was more of a low-key and less on the high-intense scary action, it gave a more realistic version of how exorcisms within the church would actually go. And I was impressed with Dan Stevens and Al Pacino and Ashley Greene's performances as priests and nuns. Another surprise in this movie was Deborah from Everybody Loves Raymond playing the old Mother Superior, a completely different character than what she's used to playing. And even though the demon in this one seemed to be a little bit more low-key, there was a lot of tension and a lot of scares in this movie. And I was impressed that it was based on a real story and real characters that existed in 1928. Coming in at number 5, released in May of 2025, Clown in a Cornfield. This movie was directed by Eli Craig. It stars Katie Douglas, Aaron Abrams, and Carson McCormick, and Kevin Durant. A fading Midwestern town in which Frendo the Clown, a symbol of bygone success, reemerges as a terrifying slasher clown. Well, what surprised me the most about Clown in the Cornfield, I had low expectations on this one, being that it was based on Founders Day holiday, and coming off of watching Founders Day and Hella Summer, which was released right before it, I felt like I wasn't going to be impressed by these clowns as slashers. However, this Shudder release was impressive, and I really liked the old school way, the 80s style horror that it gave, and I like the dynamic and the comedy brought by the conflict brought against the Gen Z characters and Gen X characters. I felt like Kevin Durant did okay playing the mayor, though I was disappointed just a little bit because of the amount of killers in this one. However, despite that, the kills and the clown scares in this one were great. They were gory, they were intense, and they were fun. Give me more clowns, and I think I wouldn't mind seeing a sequel to Clown in a Cornfield. Coming in at number 4, released in April of 2025, Until Dawn. This movie was directed by David F. Sandborg. It stars Ella Rubin, Michael Cimino, Odessa Azoyan. Basic plot. A group of friends trapped in a time loop when a mysterious foes chase and kill them in gruesome ways must survive until dawn to escape the terrors. So what surprised me the most about Until Dawn, this being a video game adaptation movie and probably a guilty pleasure of mine in 2025, I really enjoyed this movie. After watching multiple game adaptation movies and being very disappointed because too much game knowledge, too much Easter eggs, or just downright boring plots and no stories to adapt a video game into a movie, Until Dawn was extremely fun, extremely scary. In fact, when I went back and revisited my review, I remember noting that it was the scariest movie to date at the time. Now, it was only released in the 4th month of the year, but I never in any of my other reviews stated that another movie was scarier than that. Though some of them probably were or came really close, I felt like Until Dawn did a great job with the scares and the fun. Though the characters were basic, and it's a story we've seen before, I really enjoyed it. And I didn't mind the repeating day theme that they had going, like Groundhog Day and Happy Death Day, because it did remind me of how a video game actually behaves. You know, you play the game until you die, and then you start over again and play again until you die, and so forth. Coming in at number 3, released in June of 2025, 28 years later. This movie was directed by Danny Boyle and written by Alex Gardner. It starred Jodie Comer, Aaron Taylor Johnson, and Ray Fiennes. Basic premise. A group of survivors of the Rage virus live in a small island. When the youngest leaves the island on a mission into the mainland, he discovers secrets, wonders, and horrors that have mutated out of the only infected other survivors. So what surprised me most about 28 years later was I really did have low expectations going in on this one, because I honestly wasn't a fan of 28 Days or 28 Weeks Later, and it had been so long since we had seen another movie in that franchise. But I really appreciated the great new route that they went with this almost 3 decades later story. I was highly impressed with the characters, especially Spike and Dr. Kelson, played by Ray Fiennes. I also enjoyed the creative new ways and evolvements that the zombies/infected evolved over the 30-year gap. The big alpha zombies, the fast-running zombies, and even the slow, fat, gross zombies. I felt like the characters in this movie had some real heart, especially Spike. I really liked how this story went in a different route in an unexpected way with a lot of heartwarming themes, battling with grief, sicknesses, and love. And I was super excited to see 28 years later The Bone Temple and review that, and I really am looking forward to what they do in their third installment to come. Coming in at number 2, released in February of 2025, Hard Eyes! This movie was directed by Josh Rubin. It stars Mason Gooden and Olivia Holt. When two co-workers have to survive the Hard Eyes killer on Valentine's Day, the two have to find out who it is and survive the harrowing night. Well, what surprised me most about Hard Eyes, this was another one that I went in with low expectations, considering the fact that most Valentine's Day horror movies or slashers have not impressed me. I primarily think of Valentine's from, I think, 2002, and I was pleasantly surprised with the intense slasher blended with romantic comedy in this one. This one was a real genre bender, and it also added that schlocky horror and another one that gave me a 1980s horror feel. And this movie didn't shy away from the gore or the intense kills or tension spread throughout the entire movie. And upon second watch, I enjoyed it even more, and I found that I really liked the characters played by Olivia Holt and Mason Gooden. And I look forward to seeing what they do with Hard Eyes 2. And the good news is, it was just announced recently that it's in the works. Coming in at number 1, released in November of 2025, Predator Badlands! This movie was directed by Dan Trachtenberg. It stars Elle Fanning and Demetrius Schuster. A young predator outcast from his clan finds an unlikely ally on his journey in search for the ultimate adversary. So what surprised me most about Predator Badlands? Well, to be honest, I almost missed this one, and after hearing other reviewers raving about it, I decided to get my butt out to the theater and see it. And I was highly impressed with the new route they went with the Predator franchise. I didn't have high expectations because, to be honest, I haven't been big into the Predator franchise. In fact, I've only watched the first 2 entries of the series and have to get my butt caught up on it. However, I did understand that this one took a big swing by making our Yaska alien the protagonist instead of the antagonist. I enjoyed the new approach they did with this movie, having the ragtag team of misfits going on a galactic adventure across the galaxy, battling what seemed like Jurassic Park apex predator type of creatures. And I like how this movie was the ultimate combination of good characters, comedy, great action, and some thrills and excitement as well. I'm really looking forward to see where this franchise goes in the future and hope that we get more adventures with the Yaska alien. I think another thing that what surprised me most about Predator Badlands was I ended up giving it a cheeseburger in paradise, which is my highest rating on my scale of ratings. And this movie really stands out. I was impressed with Elle Fanning's acting as well as the AI robot side friend companion to our Yalte alien. Well, that's it. That's my top 10 most surprising videos or movies from 2025. Hopefully you find some gems in this list, and I would really love to hear any movies that you guys really liked or were surprised with in 2025. Put those answers in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, tap that notification bell, and all that jazz. This is Johnny with Good Burgers, signing off.